All right.
Where we begin our coverage with a report from our foreign correspondent Nick Schifrin, who's in the western city of Lviv.
For years, Moscow's military has employed scorched earth. Today, it brought that brutal reality to Ukraine. Kharkiv's central square, named Freedom, now mostly rubble and dust.
What up, everybody? How's it going, guys?
Inside the city's main government building, emergency workers removed debris and carried dead bodies. In total, city authorities said at least 5 were killed and more than 24 wounded, all civilians. Surveillance footage captured the attack, a direct hit, and a massive fireball.
All right.
Russia promised its targets would be restricted to military. This is a residential building.
Yep. That's exactly what's happening. Republican response, huh? Heh.
We're all simple civilians.
They destroyed a residential building. The rockets hit and many peaceful residents died. Putin and Lavrov are bandits and should be tried.
300 miles away in Kyiv, Russian missiles hit the city's main radio and TV tower. Firefighters fought to extinguish the fire at the site that's near a memorial to Ukrainian Jews killed by Nazis in World War II. Ukrainian President Zelensky today called this history repeating itself. Outside the city, satellite images show a convoy even larger than previously believed, 40 miles long. But a senior defense official said today the advance toward Kyiv was stalled. The official said Russia wants to encircle Kharkiv. Russian troops have begun to occupy cities in the south, Berdyansk and Melitopol, and are just outside Mariupol. But once again, Zelensky remained defiant, this time to European lawmakers. Even the interpreter got emotional.
We are fighting just for our land and for our freedom. Despite the fact that all large cities of our country are now blocked. Believe you me, every square up today, no matter what it's called, it's going to be called, as today, Freedom Square in every city of our country.
Today, ordinary Ukrainians fought for their freedom despite being outgunned. Civilians tried to stop Russian armored vehicles. Their only weapons, their bodies. Across the country, Ukrainians are rallying, even though some of their cities are slowly being strangled.
6 months ago, we prepare a city to live in an extraordinary situation. We make huge supplies, medical treatment, blood. We bought a lot of diesel generators.
Today, ordinary Ukrainian.
We completely changed situation.
Andriy Sadovy is the mayor of Lviv, western Ukraine's largest city. It's a UNESCO World Heritage Site, usually a hub for tourists. But now it's a hub for thousands of Ukrainians trying to flee the war in central and eastern Ukraine.
Every day, thousand people from a different city. It's my heart completely разрывается.
Your heart is broken.
Small children, 2, 3, 5 years.
What support would you like from the West?
Less talking, more doing.
I listening about sanction last 1, 2, 3 months. We are deeply concerned, blah, blah, blah. Russia kill children, women. Russia oligarchs must feel very strong sanction and very strong position. Today, one part democratic world, next part totalitarian world. Today we told about future. Today we creating our future. Today Ukrainian people, David attack Goliath.
David attacks Goliath.
Yes.
Right outside the mayor's office, one of David's platoons, an assembly line of civilians crafting camouflage nets for Ukraine's military, young people who already embraced a European future. And grandparents born Soviet now embracing Ukraine. Jan Pasinaya is 67. Her granddaughter, Maria Tigar, is 13.
When I was born in the Soviet Union, we were united. I never felt the borders between nations. Today, I have hatred for those who started it all. I feel sorry for all Ukrainians because I'm a Ukrainian as well, and I'm proud of that.
I was raised in a in a free country, and I think freedom is very important, and now Russia is trying to take our freedom.
The family lives in Kyiv. On Thursday morning, Russians shelled their home, forcing them...
It's hard to believe that so many communists, fake leftists are defending what's going on. Like it's justified, like it's the US's fault, like it's NATO's fault, like it's the fault of the West. It makes me fucking sick, especially when I see shit like this. It's like there's no justification for any of what's fucking going on.
And Russia is Goliath. Do you believe, do you have faith that Ukraine can win?
I believe, and today a lot of people from world believe to Ukraine. It is our...
Ukrainian civilians are absolutely not taking any shit
from that victory, but
at
looking
all.
on social media, you can see countless acts of heroism and bravery by Ukrainian citizens all over the country. The video we showed was not of a tank man taking on the Russian military, but a tank squad in Kharkiv, and innovations today from the European.
Stock market's good. I mean, there are things that they can point to. Even wage growth has been up, even though that's been eaten away by inflation. But you're not going to persuade the American people that their lives are different than the way that they are experiencing.
And the other thing, just to make sure, is
Drinking
I said
game.
we're also going to be
Lawrence
playing a
Southern, are you
drinking
kidding
game
me?
where every time Biden does something that we expect him to do, or maybe not, we'll take a drink. Is that allowed on live streams? And I was told definitively, of course, exclamation point.
You know
and very cheerfully. So I said,
I want that
I'll
gray
also mention this. A, we
Telecaster in
drink
the
responsibly
background.
here. I mean, I'll speak for myself. I drink responsibly, despite the
Aren't you
stereotyping.
drinking?
What a clown.
In Eastern Europe. I haven't committed troops. I'm not going to escalate. I'm sure you are fearing this, but the number one thing that people are sending me.
The speech, so we appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you, Helen.
Let me start on
Jesus
that front.
Christ.
Ukrainian resistance, based on your
Excuse me.
assessment and what you've heard, and I know you're not going to reveal classified information. I'm not asking you to do that.
It warned that they would be targeting military targets in Kyiv, and they told civilians living near those targets to evacuate.
Something I know they are paying close attention to. So, Nick, where you are in Lviv is in the far western end of the country, far from what you've been describing, but you were telling us you're still seeing threats in that area.
Yeah, the mayor.
All right, so it's gonna be here, I guess, on NBC, ABC, MSNBC. Who's this bitch?
Currently is. In this sense, of course, you know, the situation with Ukraine is something that happened very quickly.
No.
Something that he probably 3 to 4 weeks ago was not anticipating he would have to address tonight. So again, he's got a real chance.
That's kind of lame. So I gotta kill a little bit of time.
People, you know, folks who are watching network television, people do tune in for this, even if they're relatively politically agnostic or not engaged until it's time to vote. And they're going to want to hear how President Biden is going to keep them safe, them and their families safe, also protect them.
Blah, blah, blah. Who cares? Anyway, I guess we'll be watching this shit later. That should be a fucking grand old time, right? Man, what a bunch of dog shit, huh?
reunited the West by terrifying Europe when they saw European capital get bombed. But Nora, I want to come back to one of the things you said, which I think is so important, which is one of the things the president has little control over in many ways.
I did all that hurrying to get off work just to
powerful
wait
than the American
another hour
president
for
is the Federal
Biden to
Reserve,
speak.
and they are going to be meeting and making decision on interest rates in the next few weeks. And what happens next could determine whether this economy that's in recovery is on the brink of a.
What? Okay.
Hi guys. Олександр вас, доброго дня. Я думаю, ту відповідь, яку ви всі бачите, як ми сьогодні працюємо, як ми відповідаємо. Що стосується закритого неба, вона дуже допомогла. Це не втягування країни НАТО в війну.
It would have no. It would have literally included NATO. It would have, like, a no-fly zone, by definition, would have involved NATO. How else would you enforce a no-fly zone without ground troops?
В війну, якщо чесно, в війну всі давно вже втягнуті. І точно не Україною, а втягнути Росію в даному випадку. Повномасштабна війна йдеться. І всі вважають, що вона так швидко пройде. Ми говорили багато разів з президентом Байденом. Я вдячний йому за ці і можливості, і допомогу. Вони також мене не чули. Я їм говорив, що Україна буде боротися, ви побачите, міцніше за всіх. І тому відкрите небо. To close the sky, yeah?
Yeah, literally with, like, it, because you can't hold whoever enforces it accountable, because, like, if NATO comes in and what's the word? Enforces a no-fly zone, that's World War III. You're basically creating a direct conflict, between Russia and NATO, or the U.S., or whoever would enforce a no-fly zone. I mean, is he saying that Ukraine can enforce their own no-fly zone?
І тому ми звертаємось. Чому? Тому що це знов-таки превентивні санкції. Те, що ми хотіли тоді, коли ці санкції, зараз вони ці санкції ввели, слава Богу, і ми бачимо, як вони впливають на економіку Росії. А ми попереджали і президента, і Європейський Союз. Ведіть превентивно, ведіть раніше, ви побачите, яка буде реакція. Не буде ніякого вторгнення. Для того, щоб сісти, ти не можеш сідати, да? Коли літають літаки і йде бомбардування, сісти за стіл перемовин. У тебе звернення. Для того, щоб сісти, ти не можеш сідати, да? Коли літають літаки і йде бомбардування, сісти за стіл перемовин. У тебе зовсім різні позиції. Ти хочеш просто тиснути, ти не хочеш домовлятися. Ми про діалог. Я вважаю, так, треба припинити хоча б бомбардування людей. Просто бомбардування припинити і після цього сісти за стіл перемовин.
Hi, baby. What's up?
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.
Yeah, apparently I rushed home just to learn that Biden doesn't talk for another fucking 45 minutes, which jeopardizes work tonight, but it should be fine.
And try to understand what the reaction is.
Wait,
Jeff
baby,
Bennett
let's chat it up. Come here.
And now let's turn to Representative Abigail Spanberger. She's a Democrat from the state of Virginia. She's also a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, and she is a former CIA officer. Congresswoman Spanberger, thank you very much for joining us. As you think about the president's remarks tonight, and you know what is going on in Ukraine, halfway around the world, how do you think that factors into what the president needs to say tonight?
Well, the president needs to speak firmly and aggressively about the invasion of Ukraine by Russia. And certainly we have seen over the past few weeks as Russia was making movements towards its invasion, the president and the Biden administration had made extraordinary strides in bringing together our European partners and partners throughout the world and security partners to be unified in ultimately the opposition to this invasion, unified in our response in terms of sanctions and aggressive tactics in the face of this invasion. And I hope that he'll continue to demonstrate that leadership, speaking up for Ukrainians, speaking up for the democracy that they are defending on the ground.
The police declare war on us.
Making clear that the invasion that Vladimir Putin has led is an affront to all of our democratic values here at home, certainly in Ukraine and throughout the rest of the world.
And Congresswoman, I see you wearing the colors of the Ukrainian flag, the blue and the yellow. What inspired you to do that? And as a former CIA officer, someone who's looked at not only national security, but what the United States and freedom represents around the world, how do you see what's going on in Ukraine right now?
Well, Judy, I was living in Germany at the time that our country was attacked on 9/11. And in the days after, I had a meeting with some German local elected officials, and one of the women arrived at the meeting wearing red, white, and blue. And I remember at the time being so grateful that she had taken this step, an effort to try and demonstrate solidarity for the pain that the United States was feeling. And so today, when we have such a platform to demonstrate our support for the Ukrainian people, it's a little bit of my effort to sort of pay it forward and make sure that everyone who's fighting for their freedom on the ground in Ukraine knows that we're there with them.
I have no idea what any of that means.
Because really what we are looking at is an attack on a democratic nation, on a sovereign country within Europe. We are seeing just horrible atrocities, the murder of children, attack.
Blah, blah, blah.
Specific, like, this is my thing, this is my legacy, this is what I'm gonna get done. And so, yeah, the Build Back Better debate just ended up being about the price tag rather than any specific program that people could really understand how this is going to benefit my life particularly.
I think Joe Biden has totally bought into the conventional wisdom in Washington, and it's what every staffer around him tells him, which is like, look, man, the squad is defining you. You've gone too far left. You got to reel it in. So my guess is, and you're going to see this in the speech, and afterwards we can tell whether or not I was right, but there's going to be a lot of overtures to, you know, the moderate that he thinks is, you know, not in good favor with.
I mean, don't get me wrong, that is anecdotal.
And things of that nature. I do think he'll probably throw
but in cities like San Francisco, like I'm not surprised the police force there is notoriously like neglectful.
Try to pick off the never Trump Republican and the moderate voter. And I hope I'm wrong. I hope he goes out there swinging. But my guess is it's going to be that mixed with the whack-a-mole thing I just talked about before.
I think my morale, if I was a part of SFPD, I would be non-existent.
But again, this isn't generation-defining stuff. This isn't leaving you a legacy. This is like you're the technocratic manager who's falling flat on his face and falling asleep halfway through his speech.
You're like a terrible technocrat.
Yeah, no, I mean, like,
it'd be way better if he was an actually competent.
That was Obama.
I haven't really heard like any good news at all, like ever come out of SFPD. They're one of the worst police departments.
And that's actually kind of the elephant in the room. You all
put them up there with Minneapolis and Phoenix.
Let's just say not well-managed plan. I mean, you know, even Mitch
Fuck the police.
Disowned this plan. There's
this funny. Explain for the audience.
Yeah. So basically, I actually can't explain the actual plan, but the basic idea is Matt Yglesias had a great joke where he said, "It's funny." Rick Scott got in trouble for saying the quiet part out loud when it came to Social Security, increased taxes on working-class people. Basically, Mitch McConnell has to disown it because you're not supposed to be talking about the actual economic costs of that.
You and everyone thinks that's funny. That's what the website's for. Just being cruel.
I tweeted out, deter sarcasm, speak with honesty, because emotions, people are bouncing on a needle's point, about to lose it. I tweeted that out because
Mistake is another one, and references to people's kitchen tables. Joe Biden often uses that rhetorical tool, talking about people's conversations at the kitchen table.
You're right, John.
That is our bingo board for today. And
honestly,
a lot of people
like
seem to be feeling very confident, very, very confident.
The police have been, like, in general, have been, like, needed to get disbanded, like, for the longest time. Like, at least broken up into, like, different departments, kind of like big tech, so that different officers handle different jobs, etc., etc. It's it's fucked. Like I'm not surprised that the police in general are just so tired of their jobs. It's like, yeah, I mean, maybe you should try just stop being a police officer if it sucks that bad, because like, no shit, like the police do not have a good like the optics on police have been shot for years, but especially after the George Floyd incident and Breonna Taylor, and it's just been on a downward trajectory.
It's a form of racism. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know what else to say. If only his Novich or Putin's cup of tea makes him die of totally natural causes. Yes.
Well, I welcome it. Like,
David, do you think Russia plans to restore the
bring it on.
by also invading Poland, Lithuania?
49 officers. That's insane.
I think the latter is more likely. An incredibly powerful $50 super chat from Hawkeye Heyoka, who says, "Love the show, David. Glad I found it." Thank you. Thank you very, very much. You guys want to see some stuff? I have stuff. If you guys want to look at stuff, should we do it? Here's some really funny stuff on TikTok. By the way, you can.
Just listening, what we can go ahead and describe it as is he's virtually tied with Donald Trump. Now, the reason why you don't want to be in that situation is that Donald Trump, despite having a low general approval rating, had an extremely high approval rating within the Republican Party, up into the high 90th percentile. Biden, on the other hand, only has about 40% of Democrats who even want him to run for president again, so has no enthusiasm on his side whatsoever, has a general disapproval as well as a lack of base approval. Compare him also to Barack Obama, and you can see the exact same thing. Obama was sitting right around 49.8%. Biden currently at 41.9%. To be clear, these are aggregated numbers, so this is about as close as we're going to get. Take all the grains of salt, with the polls. Against George W. Bush, it's not really all that applicable. But even look at Bill Clinton, who himself suffered, the Contract for America defeat. At this same point in his presidency, guys, Bill Clinton was at 48%. He was almost above water. Biden is below that. Biden is below Trump, where George W. Bush was at this time. He was at 73.
HW.
Sorry, H.W.
Well,
Bush.
NW.
NW. Obviously, everybody's always going to be below W and also
Forbes
above
was
W.
not liked.
Interesting sense. But I think the final and the most important comparison I'm going to continue to track all the way through is Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter was more popular than Joe Biden was at this time in his presidency. Don't get me wrong, Carter does have the all-time low at 28.8%. But if Biden does not handle himself well, not just necessarily tonight, but throughout this international crisis, and if the inflation, the stagflation continues to come, if we see gas hit, for example, $5 a gallon across the nation, or gas lines or anything like that, I think he's done.
So here's what I will say as a little bit of maybe a bright spot for Joe Biden is it does seem like in a couple of the very latest approval polls, it's ticked up a couple of points, more to the 42, 44 range. But
you can work with that.
The problem with him being more or less tied with Trump, Marshall, is that the people who liked Trump really.
Yeah, they don't. Majority Report doesn't stream at night. That's true.
Thank you. I didn't prepare a speech.
Did want to click on that.
So.
Oop.
I don't know if I will be okay. From time to time, I think I'm dreaming.
Anyone else following the Ukraine-Russia stuff?
I have to wake up and
I'm following extremely closely.
This is what I never feel this feeling. And I think everyone. And when we talk to people, and everyone say the same. They think they are dreaming. We can't believe in 21st century it could be.
I'm Vladislav Sadnik. I'm from Kyiv myself. The big war has caught us while we were on
family retreat, skiing in the mountains in the western part of Ukraine. And we've planned this vacation since the summer, like most.
All right, well, let's get an update from someone who's in Kyiv, who's kept people updated throughout the whole thing so far.
Hi, friends. It's Andriy Vasilenko, broadcasting from Lviv, Ukraine during the war. And, I used to be a musician. You remember the good times? Even a week ago, I posted blog riffs, and I played bass and guitar, but I actually have a specialty, official, I have diploma of teacher of geography. That's something I studied in university. I had to go to school, but I understood that it's not my thing. But I remember something. I remember something about the geography of Ukraine. Let me show you. So this is the shot from the Vologda mapping. I appreciate his support of me, and he's doing a great job. And you see, it looks a bit scary, yeah? You see, the red means Russian, how far they went into Ukraine. And it looks a bit scary, such a fucking cancer. But actually, if you look closely, you see these blue dots here and here. That means that they haven't taken a single major city, and which means they basically are not controlling the territories. So that you know, most of the Ukraine, especially the southern and west, eastern, is basically open fields, farms, and they just go past them, just making their objective connect Crimea with Donbass and Transnistria, just to have this corridor for supplies and stuff. But they have no time and resources to siege every city, to conquer them. And even if they go into the cities, citizens, the civilians, meet them with go nahui. So you see the attitude across the Ukraine. So, and even if you see the news like Mariupol here.
I mean, John, I don't see many tankies that are like pro-cop, like at least openly. So I don't know, maybe.
It's a bit tiny blue dot. It seems encircled, but actually it's not. Encircled, it's a fucking fortress. It's been there for 8 years. It's been the closest to the war zone on Donbass and the closest to Russia. And it knows what to do. Mariupol just stands there. Stands, not giving up. And they won't. Because they know what to do. And they have supplies. Then we have the little blue dot Kherson. They just passed it and went into, you see how it spreads. Just to the Transnistria. They haven't taken Kherson. They passed through.
Joining in by talks for half an hour.
Chernihiv, Sumy, and most importantly, Kharkiv. The major city, the second largest city in Ukraine, which at some point was its capital in Soviet Ukraine, and it's so close to the border, literally a couple dozen kilometers. They thought they would take it like this. No, it's still standing, but it suffers massive artillery fire. The center of the city, the Maidan, the opera theater are they destroyed completely or no? Not completely, but are hit. They are hit. There are people dying. They're civilians. So when you see that Russians say we don't hit civilians, they do.
Yep.
Isn't that desperate? Mm-hmm. They cannot take the largest Russian-speaking, most Russian-speaking city in Ukraine, which was a failed attempt to make another republic there back in 2014. They cannot take it. They stand there. And so they just go where they can. Open fields, open spaces. Ukraine is pretty sparse populated territory. So that you know, Germany is twice as small, but has twice as many people. So it basically has 4 times more density of population. In Ukraine, it's about 600,000 kilometers and about 40 million people. So about 60 people per kilometer. It's pretty open. And so my message to you is, you see a lot of territory kind of being controlled by Russia. No, they just went through that space. They bypassed the cities. They don't have time resources
all rural country, all open land.
To siege everything. Their objective now is basically threatening Kyiv. Yeah, Kyiv, the capital. Just the shortcut to Ukraine is Kyiv. You take the capital, you kind of demoralize everyone, but they cannot take it. Here's the map of Kyiv. It used to be more red a day ago. Basically, the Russians are only on the suburbs and the only як диверсанти на англійською. Диверсанти, saboteurs deployed somewhere in the city, but they are taken care of.
Good news.
You know what I mean? So then, and they cannot take it. It's clear. They cannot encircle it. They cannot encircle it. And they just threaten it. They just keep it in tension. Tension. Yep. Kharkiv, I told you. Mariupol told you. And that's it. They have, maybe, will they do something to Odessa? Like siege? Or just pass through it?
They are trying to invade there from the sea.
Yeah, just something to keep in mind. Like, all of this shit, this whole Russian invasion, this whole Russia occupation, has you know, it's had the opposite effect of what Putin's intentions were. He wanted to threaten the West and like delegitimize NATO because Ukraine was neutral, didn't become part of NATO. And now, because of this invasion is such a massive failure, and it's still going on, and they're still not gaining any ground, especially in the major cities, as you can see here, it only further solidifies like the necessity for NATO. And now Ukraine is probably going to join the European Union soon.
But they can't because Odessa is the fortress.
Odessa is the fortress. It's pretty tough, and you know the troopers, they basically drowned there. It's cold water, and they just cannot take it now. And they're probably gonna bypass it straight to the Transnistria to make the corridor. So yeah, so you see the picture. They're not controlling a shit, except one little town, 28,000 people, Kupiansk, near Kharkiv. It was betrayal by the mayor, and that's it.
Wow.
One of the biggest
interesting
railway connection on 3 directions. Yeah, railway hub.
Andriy,
it's important, but that's the only way they could take the city.
Ukrainian,
betrayal.
From Ukraine.
There was attempt to betrayal in Berdyansk on the way to Mariupol, but the people met the tanks and said,
"Live there
no,
life.
We are Ukraine. You are not welcome here. Go home." So that you know, people speak Russian there mostly in their everyday life. Speaking Russian doesn't mean being Russian. So yeah.
True.
That's it. You see the picture. It's not as desperate as some may show you. In order to win, we need to see where we lose and where we are winning. To see the balance, where to push harder, where to let it go. And it's not in our interest to make it completely distorted because it's undermining the purpose. To see the picture. While Russians, they don't even report their they say, there are some casualties, yeah. You can go to YouTube and find clips of Russians killed and count them. It'd be more than the official Russian report. Go to YouTube and scroll. and
that's true.
They don't report who they capture. Basically, maybe you'll make
reportedly 4,300 Russian troops have been killed.
It's against the law of war.
For now, is about 200.
Ukrainians.
Not Ukrainians, Russians by Ukraine.
Yeah.
And about 5,500 of
killed and wounded. It says casualties. More than 5,000 killed and wounded Russian and 200 captured. So yeah, it's I believe it's a fair number. I also try to be skeptical about what I see, what I hear, but the war has been going for almost a week now. 7th day today. 7th day. 5th, 6th day, 6th day, or 7th.
6th.
Oh my God! It's the week has been so long for us, like a year. You cannot imagine.
I bet.
So that you know, I'll make another video about misinformation. Stay strong, and peace to everyone.
Looking forward to that. Come suffer through it with me. Love Rational National.
As we see increasing attacks on civilians in Ukraine, on residential buildings, what's going on in the mind of Vladimir Putin? Is there no fear on his part of the kind of reaction there's going to be when that is the shape of the Russian advance?
You mustn't forget that President Putin came to power during and then launched the second war in Chechnya. And what did they do? They leveled Grozny, the capital of Chechnya, to the ground. Brutal fighting tactics. They subdued the Chechens. That's what he knows. That was his experience. That was really how.
Looks like the Senate floor. We'll put these away. See a Ukraine flag here, or at least a garment. Some yellow ties. Maybe that's related. I couldn't tell you.
About.
Oh, I'm sure that that's what it's about. It's been about that from the beginning, to conquer Ukraine and then set up a puppet government that will do Moscow's bidding. And we had a hint of this. RIA Novosti, which is an official news.
Frustrated and angry with the pace of his assault on Ukraine. The worry for Washington, is he acting rationally? And will he ramp up the violence against Ukraine's citizens? There is no new intelligence on his mental state. But U.S. officials say everyone, including President Biden, sees an angrier Putin, increasingly detached from reality in his speeches, isolated from longtime advisors, rarely coming into the Kremlin, And when he does, meeting on opposite ends of a supersized table, more than 20 feet apart.
That, I think, creates this kind of delusional bubble about what he thought was going to happen when he first launched this attack.
Officials tell NBC News Putin has lashed out.
He's also terrified of getting assassinated.
Out at underlings in private, and in public bullied his top spy on state TV.
Yeah, this is funny.
Say it directly, he said. What do you think is going on there?
I don't know what is the matter there, but whatever it is,
Who gives
the
a
people
fuck what
of
Nancy
Ukraine
Pelosi thinks?
are paying the price for it.
Now he's raising the
Disgusting.
stakes for U.S. military planners by putting Russia's nuclear forces on heightened alert.
You don't want a madman backed into a corner with nothing to lose, especially if that madman has nuclear weapons.
With the Russian economy collapsing under the weight of global sanctions, and some of his own oligarchs even criticizing the invasion, what might he do to stay in power?
He can threaten or carry out cyber attacks against the West, including the United States, and he can threaten to use battlefield nuclear weapons.
U.S. officials say President Biden is deliberately downplaying Putin's nuclear threats and not raising the alert status of U.S. nuclear weapons, trying to de-escalate a crisis with an unpredictable enemy.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and break.
A message at the State of the Union, whether it's wearing all black for Black Lives Matter, wearing it all white, as we saw a couple of years ago, in honor of the suffragettes. Today, it is yellow and blue for the Ukrainian flag. Not just those pins, but lots of members wearing scarves, jackets, yellow ties, kind of digging in their closets to make sure they have something to support the Ukrainian people.
We're looking at this wide shot here,
Makes
Gary,
sense.
and you can really see it, right? The pops of yellow and blue and some of these sartorial choices. And I'm told that they were handing.
Interesting. He ended it.
I think that's our strength. Maybe sometimes our weakness, because people are like, oh, I don't know where they fit into the mold. But hey, fuck that shit. That's what you guys like. You guys like that we're fucking offbeat and weird about shit. So we'll see you then. Hope you guys will join us on the other side of that Patreon paywall if you're not already patrons. You know, $7 a month. You get 16% off if you do it fucking on a yearly basis. So that's a fucking pretty cool deal. And once again, I'm looking for beta readers for my book. Send me a thing on Twitter if you want to talk about it. And love you all. Bye-bye.
Long enough to spark Ukrainian nationalist movements. The Ukrainian Socialist Soviet Republic was born in 1922. Under Soviet rule, Ukrainian identity was under constant threat. In 1932, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin deliberately imposed famine there, killing at least 3 million Ukrainians in a single year.
Wow, what a nice guy.
Indeed, by World War II, some Ukrainians welcomed Nazi occupation as a way to challenge Soviet control. But the Nazis slaughtered more than 1.5 million Ukrainian Jews. Millions more non-Jewish Ukrainians were also killed or put to hard labor. By 1954, the country that exists today was part of the USSR. The final piece was Crimea, a peninsula on the Black Sea which Soviet leader Nikita Khrushchev transferred from Russia to Ukraine. But even after Ukraine declared independence in 1991, pro-Russian political elements remained, which Putin exploited. In Ukraine's 2004 presidential elections, he supported the pro-Russian Prime Minister Viktor Yanukovych. Yanukovych ran against Viktor Yushchenko, a pro-Western opposition politician.
It would be a great mistake if Ukraine misses a train bound for Europe.
Yanukovych won, but international monitors said the election fell short of its standard. Yushchenko's supporters took to the streets. They sparked the Orange Revolution, so called for the campaign's colors, holding protests and storming parliament. The Ukrainian Supreme Court deemed the results invalid, and Yushchenko won the next election. During the election, Yushchenko became ill, and his face became disfigured. It was found to be dioxin poisoning. His supporters blamed the pro-Russian government.
Who is responsible? The Ukrainian authorities are, who have been doing everything not to let Yushchenko win.
He did win, though, and continued pushing west.
The political goal is the final integration to the European Union and NATO. The main question is not in the direction of movement, but in the speed of it.
But in eastern Ukraine, support for Russia remained strong. In 2010, Yanukovych ran again and won.
My task is to make sure that Russia-Ukraine relations take a radical turn in the right direction.
One of those radical turns came in 2013. Yanukovych stopped trade talks with the EU, instead pursuing a similar agreement with Russia. That night, crowds gathered in Kyiv's Maidan, or Independence Square, which continued to grow into a sprawling camp.
We are ready for war, but we're hoping for the best. A government should be afraid of the people, not the people afraid of the government.
But the head of the Russian government vilified the Ukrainian people.
In my view, this is an attempt by the opposition to shake the current, and I want to emphasize legitimate authorities in the country.
As 2014 began, authorities grew more violent. In late February, Ukrainian security forces shot and killed dozens. Then the opposition and government reached a truce, and Yanukovych fled, reappearing a few days later in Russia.
I intend to keep fighting for the future of Ukraine against those who are using fear and terror to seize the country.
But the one trying to seize Ukraine was Putin. He sent unidentified armed men to occupy airports in Crimea, which Putin has long said was stolen from Russia. Putin denied sending in troops, but said he would if asked, setting up a pretext just as he did for this invasion.
What can be a reason to use the armed forces? This is, of course, the last resort, simply the last resort. If we see that lawlessness starting in eastern regions too, if people ask us for help, we reserve the right to use all options at our disposal to protect those citizens.
Those so-called requests for help soon followed. On March 6th, the Crimean parliament voted to secede from Ukraine and join Russia. Days later, a public referendum, rife with alleged fraud, passed with 95.5% of the vote. That July, the US, EU, Canada, and other allies imposed sanctions on Russia. More unidentified vehicles arrived in Crimea, escorted by Russian police cars. And Russian troops took over more buildings. As it is today, the Putin regime said it was helping Crimeans defend themselves, with little evidence they needed defending.
Will Russia be able to remain indifferent to the situation when, in neighboring Ukraine, Russians are facing a deadly threat? The answer is simple. No, Russia cannot remain indifferent, and it will not remain indifferent.
2 months later, Ukraine elected
threat?
its next president,
From where?
pro-European businessman Petro Poroshenko.
We should do everything possible to bring European values to Ukraine.
But the events in Crimea had inspired pro-Russian separatists in two other regions, Donetsk and Luhansk, collectively known as the Donbass.
We want to have an independent Republic of Donetsk. We want to be independent from Ukraine.
The political protests took on a military dimension. Russian-backed separatists began an insurgency against the Ukrainian military. There were diplomatic attempts to reach a ceasefire, but those never held. The fighting continued into 2019 when Poroshenko lost re-election to TV star and neophyte politician Volodymyr Zelensky, who'd once played and accidentally elected president of Ukraine. He campaigned on domestic issues, but also wanted to restore peace to the Donbass.
Most likely, if I meet Mr. Vladimir Putin, I will tell him the following. Well, you finally gave us back our territories. How much money are you ready to give as compensation for the fact that you took our territories and that you assisted people who participated in escalation in Crimea, Donbass, and assisted them on the awful, cruel, and disgusting path?
3 years later, Putin is forcing the Ukrainian people further down that cruel path, while Zelensky fights to lead them out. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Ali Rogan.
What a helpful look at the history of that country. And bringing us back to Washington, it was just moments ago that House Speaker Nancy Pelosi called the House chamber to order. That's ahead of President Biden's speech at the Capitol tonight. And our Lisa Deja.
All right.
The senator from Missouri, Mr. Blunt, and the senator from Iowa, Mr. Grassley.
The members of the escort committee will exit the chamber through the lobby doors.
Madam Speaker, the Dean of the Diplomatic Corps.
What's with that audio?
And man, if you're someone who's been like, if you've covered news for longer than I have, like, I don't know, many people out there, of course, have. I don't know how they do it, and still maintain, I don't know, sanity. I guess I don't know how they do it. It's crazy to me, and I think part of it is you really have to separate yourself from the news, and I have not really been able to do that. I mean, people that do this stuff, but then also when you do that, you then become less attached to what you're talking about, and you know, I guess you lack the passion of actually caring about the world. So you don't want to lose that either. So there is this like balance between how do I separate myself from reality so that I don't get bogged down by the negativity of news, but at the same time, I'm still attached to it enough that I actually care about wanting to, educate and improve society. That's kind of the balance that I'm always trying to, work with.
This is exactly how I
Still Alive says, Elden Ring slaps. Have you played it yet? I have not. So maybe you just came late. I started Demon's Souls because it was on sale. I bought it, checked it out because I never played a From Software game before. I may have played like Bloodborne at a friend's house once because I remember playing something similar to this kind of style of game and I died and I didn't like it. So I've kind of, not been into these games until I bought Demon's Souls, and I'm actually enjoying it now. So now I'm thinking, should I?
speech for President Biden, his first official State of the Union address, is coming at a very momentous time for the nation and the world.
No question about it. Pete Wehner, how big a test do you see this for the president, given all that is going on and given this moment in American history?
People.
Yeah.
I don't think Biden should be able to get rid of the streams. And I believe that, you know why they disabled it? Because it would be people saying, we hate you, you're awful, we hate you.
It would be funny as
It would be
hell.
hysterical.
Yes. It would.
But instead, because the public is not allowed to comment on this and make fun of Biden, we're going to have to provide that service for you
That's
guys.
right.
I'm sorry.
I am
No
down.
one-
Everyone's
no
saying
one's
20,
saying
so
that.
I will absolutely, we'll do is we'll start with an inquiry. We'll see
Literally
where it
no one's
goes.
saying
There are
you're
other
not
people
allowed
who
to
are
make fun
better.
of Biden or
for the world.
But you,
Tim, trying his absolute best to out-stupid himself. All right. Well, PBS seems to have the best audio. 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Madam Speaker, the President's Cabinet.
Excuse me. Oh God, it's Mayor Pete. What's up, baby? What's so funny?
Tomorrow we can. And I'm gonna do anything that we can. I call them.
Everything else. Its face, its reaction. Yeah, that's fucking wild. Oh God, some of the worst human beings right here. Fucking terrible. Literally resign from the Supreme Court, you bastards.
It's my ninth term. I don't really know
Some guy that supposed to be the most powerful man in the world.
Most powerful man. Wow. And then you and I tired, just assume.
Oh wow. That's a lot lower. If we get them off Ticketmaster, they're $34 each. Or Live Nation, never mind, I'm sorry, Live Nation. But yeah. Sorry, what? You guess that's what? Ghouls indeed. Affordable, yes.
Just two of us. I don't even. Oh, there he is. Ah. Knock you over.
You can tell the pandemic's really starting to wind down because no one's even really bothering to wear a mask. I wonder how badly the pathologically contrarian fucking just morons out there are gonna melt down over this. Well, it's 6:05. Where's Biden?
Madam Speaker, the President of the United States.
Here we go. There he is.
Let's see, maybe, let's see, and then I'll get you when he's there. Yes, you are. Judge, how are you? Madam Justice? Good to see you.
Amy Coney Barrett's giving him the stink eye. He was just so friendly to her. It's like, whatever, bitch. All right.
Members of Congress, I have the high privilege and distinct honor of presenting to you the President of the United States.
Thank you. Thank you all very much.
I still need to listen to
Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you.
All right, Joe.
Thank you all very, very much.
Joe Biden.
Please. Thank you so much. Madam Speaker, Madam Vice President, our First Lady and Second Gentleman, members of Congress and the Cabinet, Justices of the Supreme Court, my fellow Americans. Last year, COVID-19 kept us apart. This year, we're finally together again. Tonight,
I really hope this isn't one of those State of the Union addresses where they clap after every single thing.
Democrats, Republicans, and Independents, but most importantly, as Americans, with the duty to one another, to America, to the American people, to the Constitution, and an unwavering resolve that freedom will always triumph over tyranny. Thank you.
All right.
6 days ago, Russia's Vladimir Putin sought to shake the very foundations of the free world, thinking he could make it bend to his menacing ways. But he badly miscalculated. He thought he could roll into Ukraine and the world would roll over. Instead, he met with a wall of strength he never anticipated or imagined. He met the Ukrainian people.
Well, he's not wrong.
And President Zelensky, to every Ukrainian, their fearlessness, their courage, their determination literally inspires the world. Groups of citizens blocking tanks with their bodies, everyone from students to retirees to teachers, turned soldiers defending their homeland. And in this struggle, President Zelensky said in his speech to the European Parliament, "Light will win over darkness." The Ukrainian ambassador to the United States is here tonight, sitting with the First Lady. Let each of us, if you're able to stand and send an unmistakable signal to the world of Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. She's bright, she's strong, and she's resolved.
Who is this?
Yes. We, the United States of America, stand with the Ukrainian people. Throughout our history, we've learned this lesson. When dictators do not pay a price for their aggression, they cause more chaos. They keep moving, and the cost, the threats to America and America to the world keeps rising. That's why the NATO alliance was created, to secure peace and stability in Europe after World War II. The United States is a member, along with 29 other nations. It matters. American diplomacy matters. American resolve matters. Putin's latest attack on Ukraine was premeditated and totally unprovoked. He rejected repeated efforts at diplomacy.
Yes.
He thought the West and NATO wouldn't respond.
He literally denied
He
summits.
thought he could divide us at home, in this chamber, in this nation. He thought he could divide us in Europe as well. But Putin was wrong. We are ready. We are united, and that's what we did. We stayed united. We prepared extensively and carefully. We spent months building coalitions of other freedom-loving nations in Europe and the Americas, from America to the Asian and African continents, to confront Putin. Like many of you, I spent countless hours unifying our European allies. We shared with the world in advance what we knew Putin was planning and precisely how we would try to falsify and justify his aggression. We countered Russia's lies with the truth. And now that he's acted, the free world is holding him accountable, along with 27 members of the European Union, including France, Germany, Italy, as well as countries like the United Kingdom, Canada, Japan, Korea, Australia, New Zealand, and many others, even Switzerland. Are inflicting pain on Russia.
Sweden.
Supporting the people of Ukraine. Putin is now isolated from the world more than he has ever been.
Yeah, that's true.
Together.
Even China's like, hey, this is kind of fucked up. Kazakhstan was even like, oh no, we're not helping you out. Why don't you have a recruiting station?
Together, along with our allies, we are right now enforcing powerful economic sanctions. We're cutting off Russia's largest banks from the international financial system, preventing Russia's central bank from defending the Russian ruble, making Putin's $630 billion war fund worthless. We're choking Russia's access.
That's right.
We're choking Russia's access to technology that will sap its economic strength and weaken its military for years to come.
That's
Tonight,
right.
I say to the Russian oligarchs and the corrupt leaders who bilked billions of dollars off this violent regime, no more. The United States, I mean it.
Yeah, can't continue a war if we can't afford it, you know?
The United States Department of Justice is assembling a dedicated task force to go after the crimes of the Russian oligarchs. We're joining with European allies to find and seize their yachts, their luxury apartments, their private jets. We're coming for your ill-begotten gains. And tonight, I'm announcing that we will join our allies in closing off American airspace to all Russian flights, further isolating Russia and adding additional squeeze on their economy.
The unfortunate thing is that this has a profound impact on Russian
He has no idea what's coming. The ruble has already lost 30% of its value. The Russian stock market has lost 40% of its value, and trading remains suspended. The Russian economy is reeling, and Putin alone is the one to blame.
That's right.
Together with our allies, we're providing support to the Ukrainians in their fight for freedom. Military assistance, economic assistance, humanitarian assistance. We're giving more than $1 billion of direct assistance to Ukraine, and will continue to aid the Ukrainian people as they defend their country and help ease their suffering.
It's the right move.
But let me be clear. Our forces are not engaged and will not engage in the conflict with Russian forces in Ukraine. Our forces are not going to Europe to fight Ukraine, but to defend our NATO allies in the event that Putin decides to keep moving west. For that purpose, we have mobilized American ground forces, air squadrons, ship deployments to protect NATO countries, including Poland, Romania, Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia. And as I've made crystal clear, the United States and our allies will defend every inch of territory that is NATO territory with the full force of our collective power. Every single inch.
Yeah, seeing Ukrainian flag lapel pins.
Ukrainians are fighting back with pure courage, but the next few days, weeks, and months will be hard on them. Putin has unleashed violence and chaos. But while he may make gains on the battlefield, he'll pay a continuing high price over the long run. And a pound of Ukrainian people, the proud, proud people, pound for pound, ready to fight with every inch of energy they have. They've known 30 years of independence, have repeatedly shown that they will not tolerate anyone who tries to take their country backwards. To all Americans, I'll be honest with you, as I always promised I would be. A Russian dictator invading a foreign country has cost around the world. And I'm taking robust action to make sure the pain of our sanctions is targeted at the Russian economy, and that we use every tool at our disposal to protect American businesses and consumers. Tonight, I can announce the United States has worked with 30 other countries to release 60 million barrels of oil from reserves around the world. America will lead that effort, releasing 30 million barrels of our own strategic petroleum reserve. And we stand ready to do more if necessary, united.
Yeah, you kind of have to at this point.
These steps will help
Saudi
blunt
Arabia's
gas
not
prices
helping.
here at home. But I know news about what's happening can seem alarming to all Americans. But I want you to know we're going to be okay. We're going to be okay. When the history of this era is written, Putin's war in Ukraine will have left Russia weaker and the rest of the world stronger. Well,
Yeah, it can't be overstated how badly Putin overplayed his hand.
and while it shouldn't have taken something so terrible for people
Mr.
around
McConnell,
the
the
world
Turtle
to see
Man.
what's at stake, now everyone sees it clearly. We see the unity among leaders of nations, a more unified Europe, a more unified West. We see unity among the people who are gathering in cities and large crowds around the world, even in Russia, to demonstrate their support for the people of Ukraine. In the battle between democracy and autocracies, democracies are rising to the moment, and the world is clearly choosing the side of peace and security. This is the real test, and it's going to take time. So let us continue to draw inspiration from the iron will of the Ukrainian people. To our fellow Ukrainian Americans who forged the deep bond that connects our two nations, we stand with you. We stand with you. Putin may circle Kyiv with tanks, but he'll never gain the hearts and souls of the Iranian people. He'll never extinguish their love of freedom, and he will never, never weaken the resolve of the free world.
Iranian. And he does misspeak, but he is able to, like, correct himself.
We meet tonight in an America that
Earlier
has
he
lived
did that.
through two of the hardest years this nation has ever faced. The pandemic has been punishing, and so many families are living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to keep up with the rising cost of food, gas, housing, and so much more. I understand, like many of you did. My dad had to leave his home in Scranton, Pennsylvania to find work. So like many of you, I grew up in a family when the price of food went up, it was felt throughout the family. It had an impact. That's when one of the first things I did as president was fight to pass the American Rescue Plan. Because people were hurting, we needed to act, and we did. Few pieces of legislation have done more at a critical moment in our history to lift us out of a crisis. It fueled our efforts to vaccinate the nation and combat COVID-19, delivered immediate economic relief to tens of millions of Americans. It helped put food on the table. Remember those long lines of cars waiting for hours just to get a box of food put in their trunk. It cut the cost of health care insurance. And as my dad used to say, it gave the people just a little bit of breathing room. Unlike the $2 trillion tax cut passed in the previous administration that benefited the top 1% of Americans, the American Rescue Plan helped working people and left no one behind.
I missed that.
The previous administration that benefited the top 1% of Americans. The American Rescue Plan.
Yeah.
The American Rescue Plan helped working people and left no one behind.
Yeah. That's, of course.
Folks,
Fuck Trump.
And it worked. It worked.
Uh-oh.
It worked. We created jobs, lots of jobs. In fact, our economy created over 6.5 million new jobs just last year. More jobs in 1 year than ever before in the history of the United States of America. The economy grew at a rate of 5.7 last year, the strongest growth rate in 40 years. And the first step in bringing fundamental change to our economy that hasn't worked for working people in this nation for too long. For the past 40 years, we were told that tax break for those at the top and benefits would trickle down and everyone would benefit. But that trickle-down theory led to a weaker economic growth, lower wages, bigger deficits, and a widening gap between the top and everyone else in nearly a century. Look, Vice President Harris and I ran for office, and I realize we have fundamental disagreements on this, but ran for office with a new economic vision for America. Invest in America, educate Americans, grow the workforce, build the economy from the bottom up and the middle out, not from the top down, because we know.
Whatever, Joe. You put no restaurants in no restaurants.
The middle class grows,
mansion.
the poor go way up, and the wealthy do very well. America used to have the best roads, bridges, and airports on earth, and now our infrastructure is ranked 13th in the world. We won't be able to compete for the jobs of the 21st century if we don't fix it. That's why it was so important to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law. And I thank my Republican friends who joined to invest and rebuild America, the single biggest investment in history. It was a bipartisan effort, and I want to thank the members of both parties who worked to make it happen. We're done talking about infrastructure weeks. We're now talking about an infrastructure decade. And look, it's going to transform America, to put us on a path to win the economic competition of the 21st century that we face with the rest of the world, particularly China. I've told Xi Jinping it's never been a good bet to bet against the American people. We'll create good jobs for millions of Americans, modernizing roads, airports, ports, waterways, all across America. And we'll do it to withstand the devastating effects of climate change and promote environmental justice.
Right now.
We'll build a national network of 500,000 electric vehicle charging stations.
Yeah, that's good.
Begin to replace the poisonous lead pipes so every child, every American has clean water to drink at home and at school.
Long time coming.
We're going to provide affordable, high-speed internet for every American, rural, suburban, urban, and tribal communities. 4,000 projects have already been announced. Many of you have announced them in your districts. And tonight, I'm announcing that this year, we will start fixing over 65,000 miles of highway and 1,500 bridges in disrepair.
All right, that's good.
Folks,
bring up the wind farm off the coast of Jersey. That's a $4.3 billion investment.
When we use taxpayers' dollars to rebuild America, we're going to do it by buying America. Buy American products.
Buy America.
Support American jobs. The federal government spends about $600 billion a year to keep this country safe and secure. There's been a law on the books for almost a century to make sure taxpayers' dollars support American jobs and businesses. Every administration, Democrat and Republican, says they'll do it, but we're actually doing it. We'll buy America to make sure everything from the deck of an aircraft carrier to the steel on highway guardrails is made in America from beginning to end. All of it. All of it. But folks, to compete for the jobs of the future, we also need a level playing field with China and other competitors. That's why it's so important to pass the Bipartisan Innovation Act sitting in Congress that will make record investments in emerging technologies and American manufacturing. We used to invest almost 2% of our GDP in research and development. We don't now. China is. Let me give you one example why it's so important to pass. If you travel 20 miles east of Columbus, Ohio, you'll find 1,000 empty acres of land. It won't look like much, but if you stop and look closely, you'll see a field of dreams, the ground on which America's future will be built. That's where Intel, the American company that helped build Silicon Valley, is going to build a $20 billion semiconductor megasite.
Hey, Matt Osler, I don't deny their existence. I acknowledge they're a problem. You're just lying.
10,000 new jobs. And in those factories,
in fact, stay tuned. I got a video about it coming up.
$135,000 a year. Some of the most sophisticated manufacturing in the world to make computer chips the size of a fingertip that power the world in everyday lives. From smartphones, technology to the internet, technology is yet to be invented. But that's just the beginning. Intel CEO Pat Gelsinger, who is here tonight, I don't know where Pat is. Pat, there you go. Pat, stand up.
Can he stand up? Will he stand up?
Pat.
There we go. Okay.
Pat came to see me, and he told me they're ready to increase their investment from $20 billion to $100 billion. That would be the biggest investment in manufacturing in American history. And all they're waiting for is for you to pass this bill. So let's not wait any longer. Send it to my desk, I'll sign it, and we'll really take off in a big way. And folks, Intel is not alone. There's something happening in America. Just look around and you'll see an amazing story. The rebirth of pride that comes from stamping products made in America. The revitalization of American manufacturing. Companies are choosing to build new factories here when just a few years ago they would have gone overseas. That's what's happening. Ford is investing $11 billion in electric vehicles, creating 11,000 jobs across the country. GM is making the largest investment in its history, $7 billion to build electric vehicles, creating 4,000 jobs in Michigan. All told, 369,000 new manufacturing jobs were created in America last year alone. Folks, powered by people I've met like JoJo Burgess from generations of union steelworkers in Pittsburgh, who's here with us tonight. Where are you, JoJo? There you go. Thanks, buddy. As Ohio Senator Sherrod Brown says, as Sherrod Brown says, it's time to bury the label Rust Belt. It's time to see the what used to be called the Rust Belt become the home of a significant resurgence of manufacturing. And with all the bright spots in our economy, record job growth, higher wages, too many families are struggling to keep up with their bills. Inflation is robbing them of gains they thought otherwise they would be able to feel. I get it. That's why my top priority is getting prices under control. Look, our economy roared back faster than almost anyone predicted, but the pandemic meant that businesses had a hard time hiring enough people because of the pandemic to keep up production in their factories. So you didn't have people making those beams that went into buildings because they were out. The factory was closed. The panic also disrupted the global supply chain. Factories close. When that happens, it takes longer to make goods and get them to the warehouses, to the stores, and prices go up. Look at cars last year. 1/3 of all the inflation was because of automobile sales. There weren't enough semiconductors to make all the cars that people wanted to buy. And guess what? Prices of automobiles went way up, especially used vehicles as well. And so we have a choice. One way to fight inflation is to drive down wages and make Americans poorer. I think I have a better idea to fight inflation. Lower your costs, not your wages. And folks, That means make more cars and semiconductors in America, more infrastructure and innovation in America, more goods moving faster and cheaper in America, more jobs where you can earn a good living in America.
More green technology.
Instead of relying on foreign supply chains, let's make it in America. Look, economists call this increasing the productive capacity of our economy. I call it building a better America. My plan to fight inflation will lower your costs and lower the deficit. 17 Nobel laureates in economics said my plan will ease long-term inflationary pressures. Top business leaders, and I believe most Americans support the plan. And here's the plan. First, cut the cost of prescription drugs. We pay more for the same drug produced by the same company in America than any other country in the world. Just look at insulin. 1 in 10 Americans has diabetes. In Virginia, I met a 13-year-old boy, the handsome young man standing up there, Joshua Davis. He and his dad both have type 1 diabetes, which means they need insulin every single day. Insulin costs about $10 a vial to make. That's what it costs the pharmaceutical company. But drug companies charge families like Joshua and his dad up to 30 times that amount. I spoke with Joshua's mom. Imagine what it's like to look at your child who needs insulin to stay healthy and have no idea how in God's name you're going to be able to pay for it. What it does to your family, but what it does to your dignity, your ability to look your child in the eye, to be the parent you expect yourself to be.
Especially when it costs a tenth of what it costs in the U.S. As it does in Canada.
You know, yesterday, Joshua's here tonight, but yesterday was his birthday. Happy birthday, buddy, by the way.
He's like, oh shit,
Joshua,
thanks.
And 200,000 other young people with type 1 diabetes, let's cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month. So everyone can afford it. And drug companies will do very, very well, their profit margin. While we're at it, I know we have great disagreements on this floor with this. Let's let Medicare negotiate the price of prescription drugs. They already set the price for VA drugs. Look, the American Rescue Plan is helping millions of families with Affordable Care Act plans to save them $2,400 a year on their health premiums. Let's close the coverage gap and make these savings permanent. And second,
Osla, want to talk about it? You're welcome to come on the channel.
$500 a year by combating
my Discord's open.
Let's provide an investment tax credits to weatherize your home and your business, to be energy efficient and get a tax credit for it. Double America's clean energy production in solar, wind, and so much more. Lower the price of electric vehicles, saving another $80 a month that you're not going to have to pay at the pump. Folks, the third thing we can do to change the standard of living for hardworking folks is cut the cost of child care. Cut the cost of child care. Folks, if you live in a major city in America, you pay up to $14,000 a year for child care per child. I was a single dad for 5 years, raising 2 kids. I had a lot of help, though. I had a mom, a dad, a brother, and a sister that really helped. But middle class and working folks shouldn't have to pay more than 7% of their income to care for the young children.
You should pay no income.
My plan would cut the cost of child care in half for most families.
How about just taxing like you do Medicare?
Parents,
Medicare
including
for
millions of women who
all.
left the workforce during the pandemic because they couldn't afford child care, to be able to get back to work, generating economic growth. My plan doesn't stop there. It also includes home and long-term care, more affordable housing, pre-K for 3- and 4-year-olds. All these will lower costs to families. And under my plan, nobody, let me say this again, nobody earning less than $400,000 a year will pay an additional penny in new taxes. Not a single penny.
Well, that's good. And that raise taxes on the rich.
I may be wrong, but my guess is if we took a secret ballot in this floor, that we'd all agree that the present tax system ain't fair. We have to fix it. I'm not looking to punish anybody. But let's make corporations and wealthy Americans start paying their fair share.
Yes.
Look, last year,
Elizabeth Warren. Hey, you actually got to do something about that?
Chris Coons and Tom Carper and my distinguished congresswoman, we come from the land of corporate America. There are more corporations incorporated in America than every other state in America combined. And I still won 36 years in a row. The point is, even they understand they should pay just a fair share. Last year, 55 of the Fortune 500 companies earned $40 billion in profit and paid zero in federal taxes. Now look, it's not fair. That's why I proposed a 15% minimum tax rate for corporations. We've got, and that's why in the G7 and other meetings overseas, we're able to put together, I was able to be somewhat helpful, 130 countries agree on a global minimum tax rate. So companies can't get out of paying their taxes at home by shipping jobs and factories overseas. It'll raise billions of dollars. That's why I propose closing loopholes for the very wealthy who pay a lower tax rate than a teacher and a firefighter. So that's my plan, but we'll go more detailed later. We will grow the economy, lower the cost of families. So what are we waiting for? Let's get this done. We all know we've got to make changes. Folks, and while you're at it, confirm my nominees for the Federal Reserve, which plays a critical role in fighting inflation. My plan will not only lower costs and give families a fair shot, it will lower the deficit. The previous administration not only ballooned the deficit with those tax cuts for the very wealthy and corporations, it undermined the watchdogs, the job of those to keep pandemic relief funds being wasted. Remember we had those debates about whether or not those watchdogs should be able to see every day how much money was being spent, where was it going to the right place? But in my administration, the watchdogs are back. And we're going to go after the criminals who stole billions of relief money meant for small business and millions of Americans. And tonight I'm announcing that the Justice Department will soon name a chief prosecutor for pandemic fraud. And look, I think we all agree, thank you. By the end of this year, the deficit will be down to less than half of what it was before I took office. The only president ever to cut the deficit by more than $1 trillion in a single year. Lowering your cost also meant demanding more competition. I'm a capitalist, but capitalism without competition is not capitalism. Capitalism without competition is exploitation. It drives up profits. And corporations have to compete. Their profits go up and your prices go up when they don't have to compete. Small businesses and family farmers and ranchers, I need not tell some of my Republican friends from those states. Guess what? You got 4 basic meat packing facilities. That's it. You play with them or you don't get to play at all. And you pay a hell of a lot more. A hell of a lot more because there's only 4. See what's happening with ocean carriers moving goods in and out of America. During the pandemic, about half a dozen or less foreign-owned companies raised prices by as much as 1,000% and made record profits. Tonight, I'm announcing a crackdown on those companies overcharging American businesses and consumers. And folks, and as Wall Street firms take over more nursing homes, quality in those homes has gone down and costs have gone up. That ends on my watch. Medicare is going to set higher standards for nursing homes and make sure your loved ones get the care they deserve and that they inspect and they will look at closely. We're also going to cut costs to keep the economy going strong and giving workers a fair shot, provide more training and apprenticeships, hire them based on skills, not just their degrees. Let's pass the Paycheck Fairness Act and paid leave. Raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour and extend the child tax credit so no one has to raise a family in poverty. Let's increase Pell Grants, increase our historic support for HBCUs.
Let's pressure Kirsten Sinema and Joe Manchin so we can actually pass those fucking things.
Teaches full-time calls America's best-kept secret, community colleges. Look, let's pass the PRO Act. When a majority of workers want to form a union, they shouldn't be able to be stopped.
Yeah.
When we invest in our workers and we build an economy from the bottom up and the middle out together, we can do something we haven't done in a long time. Build a better America. For more than 2 years, COVID has impacted every decision in our lives and the life of this nation. And I know you're tired, frustrated, and exhausted. That doesn't even count the close to 1 million people who sit at a dining room table or a kitchen table and look at an empty chair because they lost somebody. But I also know this, because of the progress we've made, because of your resilience and the tools that we have been provided by this Congress, tonight I can say we're moving forward safely back to more normal routines. We've reached a new moment in the fight against COVID-19, where severe cases are down to a level not seen since July of last year. Just a few days ago, the Center for Disease Control and Prevention issued a new mask guidelines. Under the new guidelines, most Americans and most of the country can now go mask-free. And based on projections, more of the country will reach a point across across the next couple of weeks. And thanks to the progress we've made in the past year, COVID-19 no longer need control our lives.
Absolute
I know some are talking about living with COVID-19, but tonight I say that we never will just accept living with COVID-19. We'll continue to combat the virus as we do other diseases. And because this virus mutates and spreads, we have to stay on guard. And here are 4 common sense steps as we move forward safely, in my view. First, stay protected with vaccines and treatments. We know how incredibly effective vaccines are. If you're vaccinated and boosted, you have the highest degree of protection. We'll never give up on vaccinating more Americans. Now, I know parents with kids under 5 are eager to see their vaccines authorized for their children. Scientists are working hard to get that done. We'll be ready with plenty of vaccines if and when they do. We're all ready. We are also ready with antiviral treatments. If you get COVID-19, the Pfizer pill reduces your chances of ending up in the hospital by 90%. I've ordered more pills than anyone in the world has. Pfizer is working overtime to get us 1 million pills this month and more than double that next month. And now we're launching the Test to Treat initiative. So people can get tested at a pharmacy, and if they prove positive, receive the antiviral pills on the spot at no cost. And folks, if you're immunocompromised or have some other vulnerability, we have treatments and free high-quality masks. We're leaving no one behind or ignoring anyone's needs as we move forward. On testing, We've made hundreds of millions of tests available, and you can order them for free to your doorstep. And we've already ordered free
Those
tests.
have taken
If you're
so
already ordering
long
free
to
tests
actually
tonight,
get to people, though.
I'm announcing you can order another group of tests. Go to covidtest.gov starting next week, and you can get more tests. Second,
Geez, the whole
we must prepare for new
Omicron's
variants.
dying out. And
Over the past, we've gotten much better at
this
detecting
would have
new
been great
variants.
months ago.
If necessary, we'll be able to develop new vaccines within 100 days instead of maybe months or years. And if Congress provides the funds we need, we'll have new stockpiles of tests, masks, pills ready if needed. I can't promise a new variant won't come, but I can promise you we'll do everything within our power to be ready if it does. Third, we can end the shutdown of schools and businesses. We have the tools we need. It's time for America to get back to work and fill our great downtowns again with people. People working from home can feel safe and begin to return to their offices. We're doing that here in the federal government. The vast majority of federal workers will once again work in person. Our schools are open. Let's keep it that way. Our kids need to be in school. With 75% of adult Americans fully vaccinated and hospitalizations down by 77%, most Americans can remove their masks and stay in the classroom and move forward safely. We achieved this because we provided free vaccines, treatments, tests, and masks. Of course, continuing this costs money, so I'll not surprise you. I'll be back to see you all. And I'm going to soon send a request to Congress. The vast majority of Americans have used these tools and may want again. We may need them again, so I expect Congress, and I hope you'll pass that quickly. Fourth, we'll continue vaccinating the world. We've sent 475 million vaccine doses to 112 countries, more than any nation on earth. We won't stop because you can't build a wall high enough to keep out a vaccine. The vaccine can stop the spread of these diseases. You know, we've lost so much in COVID-19. Time with one another. The worst of all, much the loss of life. Let's use this moment to reset. So stop looking at COVID as a partisan dividing line. See it for what it is, a god-awful disease. Let's stop seeing each other as enemies and start seeing each other for who we are, fellow Americans. Look. We can't change how divided we've been. It was a long time in coming. But we can change how to move forward on COVID-19 and other issues that we must face together. I recently visited New York City Police Department days after the funerals of Officer Wilbur Mora and his partner, Officer Jason Rivera. They were responding to a 9/11 call when a man shot and killed them with a stolen gun. Officer Moore was 27 years old. Officer Rivera was 22 years old. Both Dominican Americans who grew up in the same streets that they later chose to patrol as police officers. I spoke with their families, and I told them that we were forever in debt for their sacrifices and will carry on their mission to restore the trust and safety of every community deserves. Like some of you that have been around for a while, I've worked with you on these issues for a long time. I know what works. Investigating crime prevention and community policing, cops who walk the beat, who know the neighborhood, and who can restore trust and safety. Let's not abandon our streets or choose between safety and equal justice. Let's come together and protect our communities, restore trust, and hold law enforcement accountable. That's why the Justice Department has required body cameras, banned chokeholds, and restricted no-knock warrants for its officers. That's why the American Rescue Plan that you all provided $350 billion that cities, states, and counties can use to hire more police, invest in more proven strategies. Proven strategies like community violence interruption, trusted messengers, breaking the cycle of violence and trauma, and giving young people some hope. We should all agree the answer is not to defund the police, it's to fund the police.
No.
Fund them.
No.
Fund them.
The police do not need more funding. They need to be broken up.
Fund them with resources and training. Resources and training they need to protect our communities. I ask Democrats and Republicans alike to pass my budget and keep our neighborhoods safe. And we'll do everything in my power to crack down on gun trafficking, of ghost guns that you can buy online, assemble at home, no serial numbers, can't be traced. I ask Congress to pass proven measures to reduce gun violence. Pass universal background checks. Why should anyone on the terrorist list be able to purchase a weapon? Why? Why? And folks, ban assault weapons with high-capacity magazines that hold up to 100 rounds. You think the deer are wearing Kevlar vests? Look, repeal the liability shield that makes gun manufacturers the only industry in America that can't be sued. The only one. Imagine had we done that with the tobacco manufacturers. These laws don't infringe on the Second Amendment. They save lives. The most fundamental right in America is the right to vote and have it counted. And look, it's under assault. In state after state, new laws have been passed. Not only to suppress the vote, we've been there before, but to subvert the entire election. We can't let this happen. Tonight I call on the Senate to pass the Freedom to Vote Act, pass the John Lewis Act, Voting Rights Act.
Yes.
And while you're at it,
God, please
pass
do
the
it,
Disclose
please.
Act so Americans know who's funding our election. Look, tonight, I like to honor someone who dedicated his life to serve this country. Justice Breyer, an Army veteran, constitutional scholar, retiring Justice of the United States Supreme Court. Justice Breyer, thank you for your service. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I mean it. Get up, stand, let them see you. Thank you. And we all know, no matter what your ideology, we all know one of the most serious constitutional responsibility a president has is nominating someone to serve on the United States Supreme Court.
Brown Jackson.
As I did 4 days ago, I've nominated the Circuit Court of Appeals, Ketanji Brown Jackson, one of our nation's top legal minds, who continue in Justice Breyer's legacy of excellence. A former top litigator in private practice, a former federal public defender, from a family of public school educators and police officers. She's a consensus builder. Since she's been nominated, she's received a broad range of support, including the Fraternal Order of Police and former judges supported by Democrats and Republicans. Folks, if we're to advance liberty and justice, we need to secure our border and fix the immigration system. And as you might guess, I think we can do both. At our border, we've installed new technology like cutting-edge scanners to better detect drug smuggling. We've set up joint patrols with Mexico and Guatemala to catch more human traffickers. We're putting in place dedicated immigration judges, a significant larger number, so families fleeing persecution and violence can have their cases heard faster, and those who don't legitimately hear can be sent back. We're screening, we're securing commitments and supporting partners in South and Central America to host more refugees and secure their own borders. We can do all this while keeping lit the torch of liberty that has led a generation of immigrants to this land, my forebears and many of yours. Provide a pathway to citizenship for dreamers, those with temporary status, farm workers, essential workers. Revise our laws so businesses have workers they need and families don't wait decades to reunite. It's not only the right thing to do, it's economically smart thing to do. That's why the immigration reform is supported by everyone from labor unions to religious leaders to the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Let's get it done once and for all. Folks, advancing liberty and justice also requires protecting the rights of women. The constitutional right affirmed by Roe v. Wade, standing precedent for half a century, is under attack as never before. If you want to go forward, not backwards, we must protect access to health care, preserve a woman's right to choose, and continue to advance maternal health care for all Americans. And folks, for our LGBTQ plus Americans, let's finally get the Bipartisan Equality Act to my desk. The onslaught of state laws targeting transgender Americans and their families, it's simply wrong. And I said last year, especially to our younger transgender Americans, I'll always have your back as your president so you can be yourself and reach your God-given potential. Folks, as I've just demonstrated, while it often appears we do not agree, and that we do agree on a lot more things than we acknowledge. I signed 80 bipartisan bills into law last year, from preventing government shutdowns, to protecting Asian Americans from still too common hate crimes, to reforming military justice, and will soon be strengthening the Violence Against Women Act that I first wrote 3 decades ago. And it's important. It's important for us to show the nation we can come together and do big things. So tonight I'm offering a unity agenda for the nation. 4 big things we can do together, in my view. First, beat the opioid epidemic. There's so much we can do. Increase funding for prevention, treatment, harm reduction and recovery. Get rid of outdated rules and stop doctors stop doctors prescribing treatments. Stop the flow of illicit drugs by working with state and local law enforcement to go after the traffickers. And if you're suffering from addiction, you should know you're not alone. I believe in recovery, and I celebrate the 23 million Americans in recovery. Second, let's take on mental health, especially among our children whose lives and education have been turned upside down. The American Rescue Plan gave schools money to hire teachers and help students make up for lost learning. I urge every parent to make sure your school does just that. They have the money. We can all play a part. Sign up to be a tutor or a mentor. Children were also struggling before the pandemic: bullying, violence, trauma, and the harms of social media. As Frances Haugen, who is here tonight with us, has shown, we must hold social media platforms accountable for the national experiment they're conducting on our children for profit.
Oh, is that whistleblower? Like the Facebook whistleblower?
Folks,
oh, sure, that's pretty
thank
cool.
you. Thank you for the courage you showed. It's time to strengthen privacy protections. Ban targeted advertising to children.
Good point, John.
Demand tech companies stop collecting personal data on our children.
Yeah.
And let's get all Americans the mental health services they need. More people can turn for help and full parity between physical and mental health care if we treat it that way in our insurance. Look, the third piece of that agenda is support our veterans. Veterans are the backbone and the spine of this country. They're the best of us. I've always believed that we have a sacred obligation to equip those we send to war and care for those and their family when they come home. My administration is providing assistance in job training, housing, and now helping lower-income veterans get VA care debt-free. And our troops in Iraq and Afghanistan have faced many dangers, one being stationed at bases breathing in toxic smoke from burn pits. Many of you have been there. I've been in and out of Iraq and Afghanistan over 40 times. These burn pits that incinerate waste, the waste of war, medical and hazardous material, jet fuel, and so much more. And they come home, many of the world's fittest and best trained warriors in the world. Never the same. Headaches, numbness, dizziness. A cancer that would put them in a flag-draped coffin. I know. One of those soldiers was my son, Major Bo Biden.
What did they say?
I don't know for sure if the burn pit that he lived near, that his hooch was near, in Iraq and earlier than that in Kosovo, is the cause of his brain cancer, the disease of so many other troops. But I am committed to find out everything we can, committed to military families like Danielle Robinson from Ohio, the widow of Sergeant First Class Heath Robinson. He was born a soldier, Army National Guard, combat medic in Kosovo and Iraq, stationed near Baghdad, just yards from burn pits the size of football fields. Danielle is here with us tonight. They love going to Ohio State football games. And he loved building Legos with their daughter. But cancer from prolonged exposure to burn pits ravaged Heath's lungs and body. Danielle says Heath was a fighter to the very end. He didn't know how to stop fighting, and neither did she. Through her pain, she found purpose to demand that we do better. Tonight, Danielle, we are going to do better. The VA is pioneering new ways of linking toxic exposure to disease, already helping more veterans get benefits. And tonight, I'm announcing we're expanding eligibility to veterans suffering from 9 respiratory cancers. I'm also calling on Congress to pass a law to make sure veterans devastated by toxic exposure in Iraq and Afghanistan finally get the benefits and the comprehensive health care they deserve. And fourth and last, let's end cancer as we know it. This is personal. This is personal to me and to Jill and to Kamala and so many of you. So many of you have lost someone you love. Husband, wife, son, daughter, mom, dad. Cancer is the #2 cause of death in America, second only to heart disease. Last month, I announced the plan to supercharge the cancer moonshot that President Obama asked me to lead 6 years ago. Our goal is to cut cancer death rates by at least 50% over the next 25 years, and I think we can do better than that. Turn cancers from death sentences into treatable diseases. More support for patients and their families. To get there, I call on Congress to fund what I call ARPA-H, advanced research, Projects Agency for Health, patterned after DARPA and the Defense Department. Projects that led in DARPA to the internet, GPS, and so much more that make our forces more safer and be able to wage war more with more clarity. ARPA will have a singular purpose: to drive breakthroughs in cancer, Alzheimer's and diabetes, and more. A unity agenda for the nation. We can do these things. It's within our power, and I don't see a partisan edge to any one of those four things. My fellow Americans, tonight we've gathered in this sacred space, a citadel of democracy, in this Capitol. Generation after generation of Americans have debated great questions amid great strife and have done great things. We fought for freedom, expanded liberty, debated totalitarianism and terror. We built the strongest, freest, and most prosperous nation the world has ever known. Now is the hour, our moment of responsibility, our test of resolve and conscience, of history itself. It is in this moment that our character of this generation is formed. Our purpose is found. Our future is forged. Well, I know this nation. We'll meet the test, protect freedom and liberty, expand fairness and opportunity, and we will save democracy. As hard as those times have been, I'm more optimistic about America today than I've been my whole life, because I see the future that's Within our grasp, because I know there's simply nothing beyond our capacity. We're the only nation on earth that has always turned every crisis we've faced into an opportunity. The only nation that can be defined by a single word: possibilities. So on this night, on our 245th year as a nation, I've come to report on the state of the nation, the State of the Union. And my report is this: the State of the Union is strong because you, the American people, are strong. We are stronger today. We are stronger today than we were a year ago. And we'll be stronger a year from now than we are today. This is our moment to meet and overcome the challenges of our time. And we will, as one people, one America, the United States of America. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you. Go get him.
Go get him. All right, well, I would sit and listen to the Republican response, but I gotta go get some work done. I might come back and record myself reacting to the response since I watched the whole thing to see how bullshit it is. But yeah, thank you guys for tuning in. Stay tuned for more.